without any further ado, we'd like to introduce our wonderful guest, Ariel Fristoe. Ariel is the founder of Out of Hand Theater, and they are doing some really exciting things in building community-engaged arts practice and innovating models for theater. So, Ariel.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. As Avital said, I'm Ariel Fristoe. I'm the artistic director and founder of Out of Hand Theater, winner of the New York Times Best Theater of 2020.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. The Governor's Award for the Arts and Humanities 2021. Shout out to Tina Lilly, who runs Georgia Council for the Arts. And the Bloomberg Public Art Challenge 2021. And I'm going to start out with the story of how we got onto the New York Times Best Theater of the Year list and built a business model that demonstrates that theater can be financially viable and serve the greatest community needs. The American theater is on the verge of collapse. This is a quote from the New York Times article titled, "American Theater is Imploding Before Our Eyes." So the past few years have seen a steady stream of news about theater companies laying off staff, shuttering programs, and closing down altogether. And the first half of 2023 alone saw a record number of theater companies closing when the New York Times published this headline. But the theater was in trouble even before the pandemic. So the last survey of public participation in the arts conducted by the National Endowment for the Arts before the pandemic, this is from 2019, revealed, oh gosh, that's really tiny. I don't know if you can read that, but luckily I know what it says. It revealed that only 9% of American adults attend non-musical theater. 9%. And the same is exactly true, 9% for classical music and for ballet and other dance performances combined, except when they are part of an outdoor festival. In the lower right corner, visual arts looks a little bit better with 26, almost 27% of white Americans attending visual arts events, but that number drops to 17% for Black Americans and 16% for Hispanic. So in the midst of all of this decline, what is Out of Hand Theater doing differently? Click. Okay, this is a collage from the early years of Out of Hand. When we started Out of Hand Theater in 2001, we realized that there were already plenty of theater companies in Atlanta doing really good work. And that we would never be able to compete with the Alliance Theater or Broadway at the Fox for things like budget size and star power. So we decided from the beginning that we should never try, and that instead we should only make work about the things that are most important to our neighbors, and that we should always do that in partnership with the local organizations doing the best work on those issues. And that we would bring our programs into the community, into spaces where people are already gathered and where they feel comfortable, and that we would combine our theater programs with social events, things like meals and parties and conversations. And then 16 years ago, my husband Adam and I built a home in the Martin Luther King Historic District. And this decision really changed me forever. We decided to send our birth kid and our foster kids to our neighborhood school, Hope Hill Elementary on Boulevard, which, I'm seeing somebody nod over here who knows Hope Hill, which, like many Atlanta public schools, is a school where at the time over 99% of the children were living below the poverty line and over 99% were Black. Now, I grew up with a single mom in subsidized housing on welfare with food stamps, and even still, I had never been inside a school like that before. Great teachers, great families and students doing the best that they could with very few resources. And then I realized that that experience was probably the experience of most white Americans, and that all it takes is for us to have positive, meaningful interactions with people who look, live, and believe differently from us, for us to know more, care more, and do more to help fix the problems around us. So from that time, 16 years ago, we decided to devote all of Out of Hand's work to helping to eradicate racism, violence, and poverty, the three evils identified by Dr. King as the barriers to building the beloved community. And that's what we've done ever since. So today, Out of Hand works at the intersection of art, social justice, and civic engagement. We use the tools of theater to help build a better world through programs that combine theater with information and conversation. And since 2001, we've collaborated with dozens of community partners to produce programs that combine art to open hearts, information to open minds, and conversation to inspire action. All of our programs still are collaborations with at least one, but usually a number of other organizations, social justice nonprofits, government agencies, corporations, schools, community groups, and they still take place not inside a building that's called a theater, but in people's living rooms, in their office buildings, in their kids' schools, in their houses of worship, in their community centers, and of course sometimes online. So what does this look like? So every spring, we produce our shows and homes. These are one-act plays that we commission on social justice topics that are paired with cocktail parties and community conversations with our partner organizations. We're usually in about 40 living rooms every spring. And recent examples include a show about gun violence with Moms Demand Action, one about mass incarceration with Georgia Justice Project. And last year, we produced a show in collaboration with the ACLU about Georgia's divisive concept law and classroom censorship. So this is the law that now exists in Georgia that has made it illegal for Georgia teachers to talk about systemic racism or LGBTQ issues in classrooms. Lots of people don't know that it's on the books, but a teacher in Marietta got fired over it, appealed, and she is still fired. Right now, we are producing a show, our current Shows in Homes, which is a project about homelessness in Atlanta in partnership with Mayor Andre Dickens of Atlanta and Partners for Home, which is the umbrella organization for homelessness work in Atlanta. And it plays through June 1st. So if you want to come, there's still a few performances left. We have 4 on most weekends, which means 2 different living rooms on Saturdays for our team. But I would love to see you there. Okay, other programs we produce. We produce civic collaborations like Stop HIV Stigma Interactive Theater Workshop with Positive Impact Health Centers and the CDC, and PACE, Prevent Abuse and Commercial Exploitation, which is a child sex trafficking prevention program, which we developed with 3 state agencies and 2 nonprofits, and we now deliver in middle schools in Atlanta and Athens, Clarke County. And until very recently, our largest civic collaboration was a vaccine confidence program that we built with the CDC Foundation in 2020 and have been delivering across the state of Georgia 40 events a year since 2021 in partnership with the Georgia Department of Public Health. It was a $1 million contract this year, and we just lost it in the federal HHS cuts. They took back the money, and unfortunately that program is not happening anymore right now. And my last example of our civic collaborations is a program called A Good Day, which we made for an Atlanta nonprofit called Families First. Has anybody ever heard of Families First? I see 1 person nodding. Okay, 2 people. So, 3, okay. This is an organization whose mission is to help families in crisis get back on their feet and stay there. And we made this program with them, A Good Day, which features the story of a hardworking family living in a homeless shelter and the 16-year-old boy whose birthday is overshadowed by the threat of being separated from his mom. Through Creative Kids, we help close the opportunity gap for low-income students and students of color. in Atlanta by providing 550 free theater classes to 350 students at 7 under-resourced schools every year. This has 2 goals. One of them is to provide excellent arts education for its own sake, because there are so many studies that have demonstrated that arts education improves attendance, engagement, grades, and graduation rates from high school as well as from college. But our second goal is to use theater as a tool to help equip students with skills that can help them disrupt cycles of poverty. Those skills are collaboration skills, communication skills, creative problem-solving skills, and confidence, which happen to be the 4 things you need to make theater. So theater is actually a perfect tool for this. Do you want to? Should I?
Try it again, see if it.
Woohoo! And then our other education program, and I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to start being brief, is the Institute for Equity Activism. This is a program where we seek to equip individuals and organizations with the tools to do their own arts-based community engagement programs, and it has optional modules that you can do in all of these areas, but it culminates in group arts activism projects that you do as part of the course. So in 2019, we had this crazy idea to see if we could get 1,000 people to have dinner with friends and strangers, mostly in people's homes, like 8 people at a time, on the same night in the city of Decatur, and have a facilitated conversation about racial equity in Decatur over a potluck dinner at every dinner table, launched by the live performance of a 10-minute play about the experience of being Black in America. And at the time, we had no idea if we could get 1,000 people to do this, even though it was a free event. We didn't know if anybody had ever tried this before. So we were thrilled when 1,400 people signed up, and we made space for 1,200 people that night with 120 facilitators and 80 professional actors and actresses, all performing the same words at the same time across the city of Decatur. The story was picked up by a dozen media outlets, including All Things Considered and Morning Edition, and suddenly people were calling us from around Metro Atlanta, but also from across the country, saying, "When's the next one? How can I have this in my community?" So we rebranded the event as Equitable Dinners, and our next plan was to organize Equitable Dinners Atlanta, 500 dinners for 5,000 people. But that Decatur Dinners event happened in late summer of 2019. And so then the pandemic hit. Luckily for us, before the pandemic hit, we had already assembled this wonderful team of partners for Equitable Dinners. And with their help, we really quickly changed plans. And in April of 2020, mere weeks into the COVID shutdown, we launched Equitable Dinners Lift Every Voice, a free monthly online program addressing a different topic related to racial justice every month, with a different guest speaker every month, and the world premiere of a new 10-minute play written in consultation with that speaker every month to put a human face and story on what they were going to say. So Equitable Dinners has addressed all of the topics you see on the right, and it also gave birth to Equitable Dinners at Work, paid private programs for all of the businesses you see here and more, that created a valuable new revenue stream to help us fund our free programs like Equitable Dinners itself and Creative Kids. And in 2022, we did finally get to produce Equitable Dinners Atlanta, actually gathering over 6,000 people at over 600 tables in 2022 alone. And more recently, we won the Bloomberg Public Art Challenge. So Mike Bloomberg gives $1 million to big cities across the US for free public art on a topic that city chooses. And Atlanta's winning proposal is a collaboration between the mayor's office, us, the National Black Arts Festival, and the CDC Foundation. And that's because the topic is health equity, or more specifically, racism as a public health crisis, which were literally the CDC's words. That was on their website. It is no longer. But luckily, the CDC Foundation is legally a separate entity, and they're able to keep working with us. They just had to take the CDC logo off. But we're in the midst of serving about 2,500 people with a custom equitable dinners program that we built on health equity in Atlanta and the social determinants of health. And in 2026, we are spending the whole year celebrating the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence with a program called We Hold These Truths, in which we invite all of you and everyone you know and everyone else in Metro Atlanta to share your American story. What is your history with this country? What is your experience with it currently? And what are your hopes and dreams for our future together? So Equitable Dinners has reached actually more like 15,000 people at this point. And one of the things we're excited about is the diversity of people who come. People routinely tell us that this is an unheard of racial diversity in public programs about racial justice, and we also managed to attract a pretty diverse audience in terms of age. We've gotten major funding from the Arthur Blank Foundation and the Coca-Cola Foundation, and we got a one-time large unexpected gift from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. I still don't know how they found us, but we're grateful. So not only are out-of-hands community collaborations good for our communities, they are also good for our bottom line. Ticket sales, almost all of our programs are free to the people who attend, so ticket sales make up less than 10% of our revenue in any year. And instead, up to half of our income comes from contracts with our partners to build and deliver programs for them or for collaboration grants we write with those partners. And in fact, this business model is so unusual that Harvard Business School published a case study on us last year titled, of all things, Out-of-Hand Theater Monetizing Creativity. We're like, what? Okay, sure, Harvard. So our programs help increase our visibility and elevate the role of the arts in our community. That's me in the front in the green with a group of Atlanta leaders, and of course that handsome guy in the middle is our mayor, Andre Dickens. Our programs help us reach thousands of people every year who don't attend traditional theater by reaching them at work, at their children's school, at their house of worship, or in their neighbor's home. And they help make they help make artists and arts organizations valuable and sought after collaborators for addressing Atlanta issues. So I have been honored to speak at conferences and universities and graduate from leadership programs and receive awards. I've been named one of the most influential Georgia leaders and one of the most powerful Atlanta leaders. I won the Women of Influence Award last year, and I just won Emory's Entrepreneur Award for Social Impact. And the AJC named me an Everyday Hero in their 2022 Thanksgiving special edition. And I've published articles about our community collaborations and our business model in the International Journal of Arts Management and American Theater Magazine. Art plus information plus conversation equals social change. As a study in the Journal of Experimental Psychology confirms, theater changes attitudes and improves empathy. And in fact, this study demonstrated that those effects are more pronounced in more conservative people. So you're not just preaching to the choir. Theater engages emotions, and I would bet that all forms of performing arts, and probably visual arts do this as well, making messages sticky and memorable. And by pairing theater with information and conversation, Out of Hand increases understanding, empathy, and action around community issues, and helps increase the community value of the arts. So I believe that it is this combination of strategic innovation, artistic excellence, and exuberant activism that won us a place on the New York Times list, as well as a place in PBS's national campaign celebrating arts organizations that did extraordinary things during the pandemic. Thank you.
This is truly amazing work that you are doing. So my question is, can you talk first about how you cultivate a community partnership? I'm sure it looks a lot of different ways, but if another organization is going to think about how they might pair art with community engagement and other community organizations, how does it work for you?
Yeah, so I'll say two things about that. The first one is that because that is all that my company does, at this point, that is a major part of my job description, and I know that's not going to be for anybody else. So in it, like, secret sauce, that's a major reason why I do so many leadership programs. It's because like a big part of my job is networking. So I just I go to a lot of events. I try to make friends with people in decision-making seats because they're the ones who can hire me or partner with me or get me, the context that I need. But the way that I started and the way that I still see it work for people who don't have that in their job description is that it can be as easy as this. Like, I think that for any size arts organization that wanted to, that you could just Google what are like the local issues in this town or city that people are most interested in right now? Like, what are the hot button issues? What are the organizations that are doing the best work on those? And then literally just ask your board of directors or your major donors or like your biggest fans or volunteers, hey, are any of you connected? Do any of you care about any of these issues? Like, which issue do you care about the most? Do you give to any of these organizations? Does anybody sit on the board of one of these organizations? And people who give to the arts tend to also care about other things. Like, there's gonna be someone who also donates to an organization who you could partner with and can make that introduction for you. And I've also, I've had success in the past with cold calling, but of course you also, you tend to have more success if someone introduces you. So I think it could be as simple as that, is like, what issue am I interested in? Who is connected to this arts organization who's also in some way connected to that issue? Make an introduction for me.
And obviously, a huge amount of this now is people look at your body of work and say, oh, that seems like it could apply to my community organization. Could we bring you too? But when you first start to talk to a potential community partner, are you saying, hey, I think theater can solve something that you need? Or is it, just tell me about your organization and what you need, and then you find a way? How is theater the solution to the other organization's problem?
Yeah. Okay. So to begin with, I'd just love to give two quick examples of, I love it that people call me now, and two projects that we're working on right now that we had no part in initiating, and that are both fairly nice sized contracts that are paying us to make art for them. One is with the city of Brookhaven, and they called and said, hey, and this is a multi-year collaboration we have with them now. There is friction in the city between our historically white residents and our recent large influx of the Hispanic and Latino residents, and we think you can help us with that. Can you hire the right artists, send them in to do research and listening sessions and all of that, and build us an equitable dinners program to help bring these two communities together and understand each other better. And then UGA called and said, hey, we are concerned about the experience of families with disabled students in our public school system. Can we hire you, and can you come in and do the same thing and build us a program to help shed light on that? So that's really exciting for me. When I'm talking to a new potential partner, I think actually the very most important thing in this work is that it's not gonna work out unless your goal truly is to serve that partner organization. If your goal is to make art and put their name on it and have them invite people and like have them add money to, but your goal is actually first the art, they're gonna feel like you're using them. And and they might be right. Like, I don't think that will ever actually work out. And I've seen so many times where people say like, oh, I tried that, Ariel, and it doesn't work. And I go, okay, tell me more about what you tried. And it turns out that what they did was they programmed an artistic work of some kind. Let's say, in the theater, they programmed a show that was on some kind of social topic, and they rehearsed that show and, built the designs for it and everything. And then they called an organization and said, hey, we'd love to invite you to be part of this. Do you want to come do a talk back?
Right.
But that organization was not part of the development. They were not consulted. They are not benefiting from it. They feel like they're being used. And I think that is, and I'm like, okay, that is not arts-based community engagement. That's just like fluff on top of your show, and that's not going to help. So I think the biggest thing is if you go to them and say, I would love to help you, and I think that, here are the things that my version of the arts are good at. Could these things be useful to you? As long as you are sincerely there to help them, they will be able to tell that, or even more, they'll be able to tell if you're lying about it, and that's what will build trust. And then there will, and then once you do it successfully once, then the next person you can give them as a referral and say,
Right.
call this person and ask how it went for them.
So how do you balance the organization's needs and any sort of aesthetics or artistic values that you might have as an organization? Do those ever come into tension, or is it never an issue?
So first of all, people like to argue about whether or not we're a theater company, which really doesn't bother me at all. Like, I don't mind if you don't think that Out of Hand is a theater company. It makes no difference to me. But I will be very upfront in that arts and entertainment are not my first goals. Actually, they're tools that I'm using. My first goal is serving my community, and theater is a tool that I can use to do it. But you cannot do it successfully with bad art. So
Right.
The artistic quality actually matters hugely. You just can't put it first. But bad art, if it's boring or if it's whiny or if it's preachy, those will do the opposite of what you're hoping to do with your
Right.
program. So it actually really does matter. Just not in the way that people.
Right. So in cultivating these sort of parallel but integrated practices, what are the things that make the art good in that context?
Yeah. Okay, one thing so I have a business partner who was in that last picture, Adria Kitchens. We are the co-executive directors of Out of Hand. I am not a sole executive director. And one of the things that is important to us that we talk about a lot is that our goal is for every person who comes to an Out of Hand event to leave feeling hopeful, connected, and inspired. If you leave feeling like, wow, that problem is terrible, but there's just nothing we can do about it, then why would you bother to try to do anything if it's too big?
Right.
Or if you leave feeling like somebody was pointing a finger at you or trying to make you feel guilty, that also is really not useful. So that is something that we have to work with our playwrights and our directors and our actors on, is that this might not be your artistic choice at another company to do this play this way, but here, that's what we're doing. Here, that's how people need to leave feeling, and that can be
Right.
tricky, and that can be, and some of it is also just I think generally good versus bad theater practices of sometimes our actors like to get extremely emotional, and we try to go, we want the audience to feel the emotions. If you're
Right.
feeling all the emotions, then sometimes the audience just kind of sits there and watches it.
And all the more so when you want them to engage in conversation, you need to push it towards that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of a current theme in our performances of that characters who are trying really well to hold it all together, so that the audience can be the ones who fall apart about it and not the characters.
How is the community engaged in rehearsal?
Oh yeah. So for instance, well, I guess with any of the programs, but I'll just use the current Shows and Homes on Homelessness as an example because it's running right now. So let's say we've, in whatever order it happens, we've identified an issue, we've identified one or more community partners, we've attempted to hire the right artists to work on that thing, and the artists have gone out and done initial interviews and listening sessions and whatever, and they're ready to present an initial idea. What we do is we then get the partners together to hear the pitch. Like this is what we think, and get feedback on that of like, oh, this is why that's not a good idea, or here's the thing you don't know that you're leaving out. So we do that, and then generally the writer will go away and write something, and then we'll come back and do that again at a table read where, once again, it happens a lot. I mean, with Amina McIntyre, who wrote How to Make a Home, they came back and they were like, oh, you don't know this, you don't know this thing about homelessness. You don't know this thing about how housing vouchers work, or what kind of documents you have to have, or how shelters work, or whatever. And then we have to continue to tweak that. So those are like two critical stages where the partners need to be involved. And then they come to, and then the next thing they come to is like the invited dress, which is like, last chance to give input, but please don't give too much right now because we open in a couple of days. Because of time, I'm going to ask 2 questions in one as my last question, which is, how do you hope, you've had so much momentum, and there are also certainly challenges in this funding environment. You talked about this like $1 million contract going away, but how do you hope that Out of Hand continues to grow? And how do you hope in any way that other organizations are impacted by that and also grow? Yeah, and I know it's a pretty tricky world right now, navigating the whole, like, we're not supposed to talk about DEI issues thing anymore. One of the things that I think I actually meant to say and didn't say during the initial presentation, and one of the things that we see as a really valuable tool, no matter what level you have of like things, whether or not you're allowed to say the word diversity, for example, at your place of work right now, is that another thing that our programs, an unintended consequence of our programs that we're really excited about, is that they are great for increasing people's feelings of connectedness and social cohesion. And that was, once we figured that out, we were like, oh, we need to start measuring for that. So that is one of the things we measure in our surveys for everybody at every program right now. And it's pretty astounding, but like having a positive, meaningful interaction with a friend or a stranger about something that matters to you, actually it turns out works great to just like improve the social fabric. So that's one of the things we're leaning into, and I think like in the We Hold These Truth stories that we're doing next year, of that like no matter what, even if you can't talk about politics, even if you can't talk about race, we are living in an immensely divided time, and the more that we can do to bring people together and have them have positive interactions about anything that matters to them, the better. So that's one of the things we're leaning into. The other part of that answer is that, as I said at the beginning, arts organizations are suffering. I mean, every other week I go to these online Zoom calls with the National Membership Organization for Professional Theaters. There's like 2,000 or more professional theaters across the country. And like just, one the other day, another major theater company was like, well, I'm here to tell you we're closing. It's like, it's all the time. And so we are 4 times, even with losing this $1 million contract from the HHS cuts, we are 4 times bigger as an organization in terms of our budget than we were in 2019. Like we are going the opposite way. And so what my kind of personal mission right now is, how can I help? How can I help any arts organization across the country? Maybe not do anything like what I do. I'm not saying anybody else should, that social justice is going to be their thing or whatever, but I am hopeful that doing some kind of community collaborations in any community across the country can help arts organizations bring new people into their venues and to their programs by just even if you're not there for the art, you're there for the partner organization or the issue, and that making our programs social events in a time of so much divisiveness and loneliness, like this epidemic of loneliness, that's another way that arts organizations can help themselves generate revenue and community support. And audiences and also at the same time benefit their community.
Well, thank you so much, Ariel. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
And happy to have all